upload a few of the older lessons for those, inshallah, for those who could not make them. So, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, wassalatu wassalamu ala Sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa ashabihi wa atba'ihi ajma'in, Ameen. We have reached the chapter of At-Tamyiz, which basically you can call the clarifier, something that clarifies something for you. There is an ambiguity, and this particular word clarifies that ambiguity and tells you and removes that confusion that exists, or the ambiguity that exists. So as you know, we are still going over the mansub nouns. We completed the marfu' nouns, and we are in the chapter of the mansub nouns, and the mansub nouns are many. Basically, the chapter of mansub nouns is subdivided into other subchapters, and we are currently going over the chapter of at-tamyiz. And the author, rahimahullah, says, التمييز هو الاسم المنصوب المفسر لمن بهم من الذوات نحو قولك تصبب زيد عرقا وتفقأ بكر شحما وطاب محمد نفسا واشتريت 20 غلاما وملكت 90 نعجة وزيد أكرم منك أبا وأجمل منك وجها ولا يكون إلا نكرة ولا يكون إلا بعد تمام الكلام. So the first sentence, the muallif or the author, may Allah be pleased with him, says, هو الاسم المنصوب المفسر لمن بهم من الذوات. He is defining a tamyiz. What is the clarifier? What is a tamyiz? It is the mansub noun that explains essences that are ambiguous. What does he mean by that? He gives an example to make that clear. نحو قولك, such as زيد تصبب زيد عرقا. Zayd is pouring. If someone told you Zayd is pouring, wouldn't that be confusing? Like, what does that mean? What do you mean Zayd is pouring? And then you add sweat. Now sweat makes it clear, right? Now it makes it clear that what Zayd is pouring is sweat. And this is the tamyiz part. The sweat is the tamyiz part. Okay, and this is. Can someone tell me the i'rab of araqan? What's the i'rab of araqan? Yeah, what's the i'rab of araqan here? Let me make it easier. It's not a hard question. What chapter are we on right now? Right, we're on the chapter of mansub nouns. Because we're in the chapter of mansub nouns, everything that we talked about should be mansub. So araqan is mansub because it is, as we said, araqan is the clarifier, is the differentiator. So it is mansub, right? And the same thing goes with shahman, and the same thing goes with nafsan. Oh, and the second example that the author gives is tafaqqa bakrun shahman. Bakr is filled. If someone told you Bakr is filled, you would be like, what do you mean Bakr is filled? And then you say with meat, right? With meat. Basically, the author is saying this individual is obese, right? Or this example is saying that, right? And the meat part is the clarifier. It clarifies for us what Bakr being filled means. What do we mean when we say Bakr is filled? And the second one is the third example. I mean, is Muhammadun Taba Muhammadun nafsan. Muhammad is good. And with this one, it's a bit tricky because Muhammad is good. You know, you could argue that this is a complete sentence and then it's not ambiguous. But usually, a certain aspect of a person is good. Not everything about a person is good, right? Um, for example, if someone is good when it comes to you know, let's say their their intellect, they may not necessarily be good when it comes to their character, right? Someone who's good in Arabic, for example, may not necessarily be good when it comes to um, Estonian, right? I don't, or may not be good in German. So from that perspective, when you say Muhammad is good, there is still a bit of ambiguity. What about Muhammad is good? Can you be more clear? What do you mean when you say Muhammad is good? So
Brother,
yes.
sorry, may I just ask a quick question? What's the sign of the i'rab? It's fatha, isn't it? But you were
Yeah.
saying nafsan, right? So is that like does the tanween play a role or something?
Yeah, so the tanween, remember the tanween is we consider tanween to be basically a brother or a sister of fath. So basically tanween or fath, they can both be the sign of nasb for a singular noun. Um, and that's what we've been talking, we've been mentioning, when we talk about mansub nouns. But the reason it's tanween, it's because it's indefinite. Remember, tanween only goes on indefinite nouns. Because if there was alif and lam, the definite article, we would not be able to add tanween to it. But because it's indefinite, we have to add tanween. Does that make sense, brother? Khan?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
No problem. Thank you. Okay, so in this case, Muhammad is good. Um, we can add. So when it comes to his nafs, when it comes to his nafs, right? When it comes to his nafs, he has a good nafs. You know, he has a good. His by essence, he's a good person. So in this case, we're talking about his character, right? Right here, we're talking about who he is as an individual. And usually, when people say someone is good, that's what we default to. That's the meaning that we default to. The fact that this person is good and in nature. But there could be some ambiguity in there. Muhammad is good in what, right? What are you talking about? If we don't take that default position. So I translated nafsan, as when it comes to his nafs, because it's really hard to translate word by word. It wouldn't make sense if I translate word by word. Okay. And then we have more examples. واشتريت 20 غلاما. اشتريت 20 غلاما. I bought 20 servants. 20 servants. وَمَلَكْتُ and غُلَامًا, servants are, so when you say I bought 20 or I bought 30, anything, regardless of what you bought, when you say I bought, for example, 50, it is ambiguous until you say to the audience or to the second person what you bought, right? You can't just say I bought 50, right? You have to clarify what you mean. What you bought by you bought 50. What did you buy? So here, servants is the what do you call it? The tamyiz or the clarifier, and well, and وَمَلَكْتُ تِسْعِينَ نَعْجَةً, and I owned 90 sheep. I owned 90 sheep. So here, when you say I owned 90, again, that's ambiguous. You need to mention what you owned, and the sheep part or na'ja, what you owned is the clarifier. Okay. And then we go to the next slide. And he gives us more examples. Zayd wa Zaydun akramu minka aban. Zayd is more generous than you. Now in this case, there is no ambiguity. Zayd is more generous than you, but you still can use clarifier, use tamyiz to indicate whether you mean Zayd himself is more generous than you, or whether you mean Zayd, something else about Zayd is more generous about something else about you. For example, in this case, the example goes, Zaydun is more generous than you, his dad, or meaning when it comes to his dad. So what that means is Zayd's dad is more generous than your dad. That's what you're trying to say. Right? That's what you're trying to say. Basically, the meaning of the sentence is that Zayd's dad is more generous than your dad. But the way this is one way you can say this as by saying Zayd is more generous than you when it comes to his dad. And when it comes to his dad, that all is a translation for Aban, for the clarifier. And again, if we translate it word by word, it may not necessarily make sense in English. So I have to translate it in a way that it's relatable. Okay, and then the last one is وَأَجْمَلُ مِنْكَ وَجْهًا, meaning Zayd is more handsome, more beautiful than you when it comes to his face. So if I translate it word by word, it'll be like this, just to give you an idea of why I say it won't make sense. So if I translated word by word, it would be Zayd is more handsome than you, face. Right? That obviously is very unclear. So to make it clear, I would add when it comes to his face. Or when it comes to facial beauty or something.
Sheikh, I have a question.
Yeah.
In this example, in the previous part of the phrase, just the father was the clarifier here? Just father?
Yeah, just the father, and then the second part is just the face.
Okay, yeah, and you have included all the other words there just to make sense in the English translation, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay,
exactly.
Yeah, got it.
Jazakumullah khairan. So, and the author concludes this chapter by saying, وَلَا يَكُونُ إِلَّا نَكِرَةً ولا يكون إلا بعد تمام الكلام. And the clarifier or tamyiz, which are the words that we highlighted, they do not, they're always indefinite. They're always indefinite, meaning they do not come in the form of definite noun. And they also always come after a complete sentence. So if you look at the sentences that we read, even though they're ambiguous, they're complete. For example, when you say Zaid is pouring. Zaid is pouring, even though it's confusing, but still it's a complete sentence. There's a subject and there's the verb. Bakr is chilled. Even though it's confusing, it is a complete sentence. And then you mention meat, or you mention sweat, or Muhammad is good. Muhammad is good is a complete sentence. But then you mention when it comes to his nafs. The only thing that is a bit unclear that whether it's complete or not when you say I bought 20. So I bought 20 is also actually a complete sentence, but it's just it's ambiguous, right? You bought 20 what? You have to mention. The same thing, I owned 90. I owned 90 is also complete, but it is ambiguous, so you need to clarify it. And Zaydun akramu minka. Zayd is more generous than you is a complete sentence, right? But you make it more clear by mentioning what you mean. How you mean when it comes to his dad, meaning his dad is more generous than your dad. Wa ajmalu minka wajhan. And the same thing with the second part. Zayd is more handsome, beautiful than you when it comes to facial beauty, right? That also, the first part of it is a complete sentence, but then we add clarification to what we meant. We add clarification to make it clear what you meant. Yeah, so that's what the author means when he says, and it must come after a complete sentence. So two things: tamyiz, or the clarifier, will always be indefinite, and it will always come at the end of a complete sentence, after a complete sentence. So that's the chapter of tamyiz, and then the next chapter is babul istisna, the chapter of exception, and that chapter is long. It's a whole page, so inshallah we'll leave that for next week. But we only have 4 pages left, inshallah, and we will be done. So I'm assuming in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, inshallah, in 5 sessions we will be done with the book, inshallah. Any questions?
Yeah, Sheikh, no question regarding this. I mean, it was quite straightforward and easy. But the thing is, what I would like to mention is, after the next 5 session, we'll have the exam, or?
Yeah, we'll have the exam, inshallah.
Yeah.
Inshallah.
Sheikh, we will like to have, I mean, we need this. We need a study leave. I mean, we need to have a break before the exam so that we can
Yeah.
So, and we will probably come up with questions, and because I need to really get this done properly, this so that I can actually have something from this lesson. I learned something, not just I wouldn't feel it right if I haven't learned anything from the course. So yeah, just right after the, I mean, that's what I was trying to say. Right after the 5th lesson, we would like to have a break when we can have the meetings, but on the meetings, we'll just go back and forth with the previous lessons and any questions that we had, so that it's like a revision. Will that be all right, Sheikh?
Yeah, inshallah. After we're done, we're gonna have 1 or 2 weeks of review, and then after that we'll have the quiz, inshallah, or the final exam, inshallah.
Okay, inshallah.
Inshallah. Good questions. Jazakumullah khairan. Any other questions before we end the class? So if no other questions, inshallah we'll conclude. Subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun. وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين صلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه وأتباعه أجمعين جزاكم الله خير.
جزاك الله خير.